Vice President Yemi Osinbajo meets members of Nigeria-Russia Chamber of Commerce, assures them of government support.
Senate President inaugurates integrated poultry farm estate in Yobe.
There will be 3,000 chicks monthly. And this will be sold out to those who will be coming to buy them.
House of Representatives holds public hearing on security bills as Senate screens EFCC board members.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss enhancing water transportation in Nigeria.
Water transportation is one of the major means of moving goods and humans from one point to another globally.
In Nigeria, water transportation has been an integral part of shipment in both rural and urban areas where waterways are available.
Now, the importance of this mode in the tripod of transportation to the socio-economic development of the nation necessitated the dredging of River Niger by the federal government to enhance movement of goods across the country's waterways.
Now, as part of that project, a number of river ports were cited as strategic locations to boost economic activities. Actually, it's not as part of the efforts. You earlier had ports, and then, of course, because of the siltation of the River Niger, it had to be dredged.
Exactly, and some of the river ports had since been constructed and inaugurated, but are yet to be put into optimal use to achieve the purpose for their establishment.
And also, to ensure safety and security on the waterways, President Muhammadu Buhari recently launched the Deep Sea Project.
Similarly, Minister of Transportation Rotimi Amechi flagged off the removal of wrecks on the waterways to ensure free movement and safety of passengers and goods.
Well, with the recent blockage of the Bida-Lambata Road by articulated truck drivers in Niger State, one question that pops up immediately is how inland waterways transportation can be further exploited to reduce the volume of traffic on the highways and the attendant issues that often would arise. And what, of course, is delaying the resort to the movement of goods and passengers using the waterways. And what is likely to happen to the river ports and other facilities now lying fallow along the riverside, now that it is being reported that some elements have started pilfering navigational equipment on the waterways.
And how would that affect safety of commuters on the waterways? To what extent would the Deep Blue project enhance safety and security on the waterways? These are some of the issues we intend to raise with our guest as we discuss enhancing water transportation in Nigeria. On today's edition of the program, I am Jumai Yusuf. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. Jumai, of course, we need to remind ourselves that now we are in the modern era. One of the earliest means of mass transportation was by water.
Yes, canoe.
Absolutely, absolutely, by water. You had ocean-going vessels on the seas, and then, of course, on the oceans, long before the advent of aeroplanes.
Of course,
which
many countries would not have been discovered without, waterways actually.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's no question about that. Yeah. And we had that system running well for us. But unfortunately, we have yet to put them to optimal use. So that's part of what we're taking a look at today. It's the rainy season, of course. I'm sure those of us in the Federal Capital Territory would have witnessed the relentless rainfall for several hours last night. It's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're broadcasting from our Abuja headquarters studios. We have our complimentary segments, and these include newspaper review, business, and others. Right.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayer Tiobi, is in the studio. Good morning, Bayer.
Thank you, Jume. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley.
Hope you enjoyed the rain.
Yes, it's beginning to taper down.
Yes.
What we used to have as August break has now become a September break.
Exactly.
Where was the break? There was
There was no break. August break.
Several hours.
Yes.
I had to park for almost an hour.
Yes.
Before I could drive home.
Yes.
So I couldn't see nothing on the road.
My concern as the rains were pouring was just to say, look, I hope the low-lying areas don't get impacted.
Yeah.
Especially Trademore.
Well, I wouldn't know what they have done.
Especially around the FCT.
Yes, here in the Federal Capital Territory, and indeed other locations where urban flooding has become a major challenge. This year we're having less of river flooding, as the experts told us last week, but it's more of urban flooding.
Urban flooding, yes.
This is a function of violation of planning rules in the first instance, and also indiscriminate disposal of refuse, silted drains, and so on and so forth.
And NIMET had warned at the beginning of the year that the critical months were August, September, and October.
Well, we'll see. We just hope that it's the very best. Because we continue to practice mostly rain-fed agriculture, it's also good news for farmers.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Jermaine?
Well, let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, just below the masthead. Insecurity, naval chiefs canvass for border walls. You find details on page 8. Insecurity, naval chief canvass for border walls. Electoral Act, pressure on lawmakers to adopt House version on e-transmission. Electoral Act, pressure on lawmakers to adopt House version on e-transmission. You find details on page 31. 42 killed in attacks, reprisals in Kaduna. Details on page 38. And the bold headlines we have in the Daily Trust newspaper: 2023, North rejects Southern governor's demand for power shift. With riders says they are confused over VAT. Hails anti-banditry operation, and Afenifere Pandev condemns stance. Governor's mum. You find details on page 5. But at the side piece of the picture story you see there at the governor's meeting yesterday in Kaduna, Nigeria's e-Naira platform goes live without transaction. Details on page 20. Fuel scarcity looms as tanker drivers mobilize for strike over poor roads safety. Details on page 18. One dies as classroom collapses on students in Ogun State. You find details on page 28. On the picture stories there, northern governors and traditional rulers during their meeting in Kaduna yesterday. At the bottom plate of the Daily Trust newspaper, how ISWAP fighters attacked our base in Sokoto. That's from the defense headquarters. How ISWAP fighters attacked our base in Sokoto. With riders, no ISWAP element in Sabon Birni. Take over all ungoverned spaces, attributed to experts on security. Kinsley?
All right, let's also take a look at the front page of the Leadership newspaper. Immediately below the nameplate, Brent crude nears $80 as supply tightens across regions. And this story is also the 2023 presidency. Northern governors and traditional leaders reject power shift. That's page 4. You have a number of riders in that headline. The northern governors and traditional leaders rejecting power shift, slam southern governors over stance on zoning, urge armed forces to sustain onslaught against terrorists, call for caution over VAT controversy. We will wait for Supreme Court pronouncement. That's according to Rivers and Lagos. And you have a sidebar there indicating the governors who were in attendance at the meeting and the traditional rulers who were also in attendance at the meeting. Now, the second lead story, that's right below the photograph, says secrecy in government undermining access to information. And that's according to the Nigerian Guild of Editors, and says presidency and National Assembly major culprits. Troops repel attack, eliminate several bandits in Sokoto. FAN shuts Kebbi Airport over 33 million naira debt. Electoral Act. Saraki and CSOs urge National Assembly to act in national interest. COVID-19. Federal government decries the extortion of travelers at airports. Bayo.
Thank you, Kingsley. Well, let's start with the pronouncement by the 19 governors of northern states and the monarchs following their meeting at Sir Kashim Ibrahim House yesterday. In the communique read on their behalf by chairman and governor of Plateau State, the governor asserted that the demands by the 17 southern governors that the president come 2023 should come from the south is unconstitutional. They cited chapter 6 of the Constitution, section 133 and 134 specifically, that it requires a majority of 25% of votes and 2/3 of the states of the federation. And in the event of a runoff, it is only a simple majority. The meeting at Sir Kashim Ibrahim House also make pronouncement on the value-added tax, which it described as being sub judice. Nevertheless, they made some observations that the High Court judgment in Port Harcourt has questioned the constitutionality of value-added tax, as well as several other taxes that are levied. And they listed these to include withholding tax, education tax, NNDC tax, National Economic Development Tax, as well as 13% derivation and the NITDA tax. Also, they pointed out Rivers State and Lagos have enacted VAT laws, observing that if every state enacts VAT law, it will result in multiple taxation, and the consequence will be multiple taxation, increase in prices, and the collapse of interstate trade. They observed that their competitors in the southern counterpart seem to confuse value-added tax with sales tax. Value-added tax is consumption tax. On security, they said they were encouraged by the initiatives of the security regarding banditry, kidnapping, and Boko Haram, and they encourage security agencies to sustain the tempo and make the operations simultaneous. The host governor, Governor Nasser El-Rufai, reiterated the challenges in the region, especially in the area of the economy, the rural economy, which has been destroyed, as well as the challenges about federalism. At the House of Representatives, the committee which is looking at national security and intelligence has been told that Chadian army is a potential source of illegal small arms in proliferation in the West African sub-region. It is estimated that about 500 million weapons, small arms, are proliferated in the sub-Saharan region, and 350 million are found their way into Nigeria. At the public hearing, Commodore Jamila Abubakar, who was representing the chief of Naval Staff, was categorical. He said specifically that from experience as a member in charge of fight against Boko Haram, some countries which share border with Nigeria don't have armories. Most of their arms are donated by developed countries. He cited an example that an average Chadian soldier has between 20 to 30 arms underneath his bed. And when he is broke, he picks up one and sells it out for $30. Commodore Abubakar said that we must seek collaboration with ECOWAS countries especially those who donate such arms. We should insist they should have armories, and the handling of arms should be professional. Otherwise, we are left with no choice than to build a wall between us and them. In the area of security in the FCT security comprising the police and the Department of State have raided kidnappers' den, especially those who have been terrorizing residents at Peggy, an area in Kuje Area Council. The kidnappers were overwhelmed when the security men took the war to their enclave. 7 persons who had been abducted were rescued. One of the kidnappers was neutralized. Others were said to have escaped with gunshot wound. Earlier on, the wife and daughter of a pastor who was also abducted has also regained freedom. There's a sad development coming from Rivers State. 13 wedding guests who were traveling in a bus, unfortunately, had a fatal head-on collision with a truck at Opogu Dufo Road in Rivers State. The victims were traveling from Eche in Rivers to a wedding in Imo State. Unfortunately, 11 of them were said to have died on the spot, and 2 others were being taken to hospital. And a person who was there said that the collision was caused apparently by overspeeding. And after the collision, the bus had to somersault about 3 times. The danger of overspeeding. Sometimes when the roads are good, you have the danger of overspeeding, which also brings its consequences.
That's right, Bayo. There's no question about that. Unfortunately, I mean, may the souls of the deceased rest in peace. We have a number of issues, obviously, you know, with driving, particularly commercial vehicle drivers. Sometimes their vehicles are poorly maintained, and then you check out the wheels. You know, there are issues with the wheels, and you don't even know the state of mind of the driver.
And the speed.
And the speed. And there will be passengers inside the vehicle. Some of the passengers, they will always keep quiet. I don't know why they keep quiet.
And if you speak, they now tell you why are you the only one in the car?
Precisely.
Yeah.
Well, you should
That's
keep
what
quiet
they tell
because your life is in danger.
Absolutely,
Yes.
Bayo. There's no question about it. I mean,
There's
for those who use
some
commercial
positive
vehicles.
news in the area of business. International investors are set to have faith in Nigeria. This assertion was made by the Debt Management Office. The DMO cited the oversubscription of Nigeria's recent Eurobond sales as a positive indication. Nigeria had raised 4 billion when it actually had intended, its target was about 3 billion. Mr. Joe Ugwala, the Director of Operations and Research, says that we were asking for 3 billion. We ended up having 12.2 billion, which is almost 400% oversubscribed. But we took only 4 billion, which is what the National Assembly has provided. Mr. Ugwala stressed that this is an indication that many countries are still interested in Nigeria, and the instruments were purchased across from nations from Asia, America, and Europe. And the National Bureau of Statistics also has indicated that 15% of businesses expanded their operation in spite of the hazards of the COVID-19. In a report which indicated that they conducted the survey with the United Nations Development Program, the survey indicated that the formal and the informal sector all achieved some expansion. And that was indication that many businesses have resorted to doing businesses online, marketing and adding the value to their delivery services. So they are taking advantage.
There's so much interest in Nigeria apart from COVID. It's just the insecurity that it's sort of scaring people not to come invest. But Nigeria has so much potentials.
And a lot of initiatives.
Yeah, initiatives.
Yes.
And
Push
we have
the Nigerian to the
manpower.
wall and you'll be surprised with the kind of initiatives you come out with.
Exactly. And I was just reading, talking about proliferation of small arms. Custom, it's inside the Daily Trust newspaper on page 4. Customs intercept 751 ammunitions concealed under cassava flour in Oyo State. 751. That's a scary statistics.
Yes. And guess what? The moment they spotted it, the drivers, those who occupant of the vehicle, ran away. I think they still can be traced. It's not the first time such is happening.
Yes.
Trace them, the vehicle has registration, trace them to the owner, and they must be tracked down. And this shouldn't be just the end of the news. You recall several times, even the customer, through their vigilance, had impounded a truck that was conveying arms away from the port and heading somewhere in the country. Nothing has been heard about what the outcome of that. Who were those involved and what has happened to those who were arrested.
Let's quickly go to the editorials. We're running out of time. Killer insecticides. Regulatory agencies must wake up to check the alarming trend.
Yes, insecticides are what you use domestically to eliminate mosquitoes and other pests in the house. But when they become a danger to human beings, it means somebody somewhere is not doing their job. NAFDAC is doing its job. Standard Organization of Nigeria is doing its job. But obviously from that editorial, there is indication that there are infiltration of adulterated products finding their way into the market.
The editorial is from the Nation newspaper, actually.
But it's also the use, the application of insecticides. Some persons would, as the saying goes, flit their rooms, and then only for a few minutes or maybe an hour or two later, they re-enter the same rooms, and then you are inhaling those noxious gases from the insecticide. So I think it's critical. I mean, we have advanced in a sense, because these days there are insect screens, what people popularly call mosquito screens, X, Y, Z, so you have less intrusion from flying insects.
Yes, that can pollute the air.
Yes, that can pollute the air. So it also depends on how it's applied. But the thing actually to do is caution. And the less of it, if you recall, when we were growing up, it was mosquito coil. I was
Put the smoke.
Mosquito coil, you know, and in some cases, I think some years later, even with the mosquito coil, you still saw some very stubborn mosquitoes, you know, flying
through the smoke.
Well, Bayo,
thank you very much.
we have to let you go. Thank you so much for coming this
Enjoy
morning. As usual, we appreciate you. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll begin to discuss our topic, enhancing water transportation in Nigeria, in a moment. Don't go away. You're welcome back. And to begin our discussion, let's take this background report put together by Ekene Ndului.
The International Maritime Bureau ranks Nigerian waters and the Gulf of Guinea as the world's most at risk for piracy. Incessant crimes of piracy, sea robbery, oil theft, and kidnapping on waters have been copiously recorded in the domain, and this has largely affected development of the country's maritime sector. In the inland waterways, Nigeria's inland navigable waterways of about 10,000 kilometers and an extensive coastline of about 852 kilometers has huge potentials to move goods and passengers from the coast to the hinterland by water. Despite these huge potentials, Nigeria's water transport system is yet to become an alternative means of transportation to road and air, such that passengers and cargoes can move to their destinations through water. Experts in the transportation sector believe that the perennial gridlock at the Apapa Expressway and the protest by articulated vehicle drivers at the Minabida Road and other such incidences could be avoided with an effective water transportation system. Also identified as a constraint to effective water transportation in Nigeria is the huge amount of wreckages in Nigerian waters, which serve as a major problem hindering navigation along the waterways. To tackle some of the challenges, the federal government has made a number of efforts in this regard. One of such efforts is the inauguration of the Deep Blue project by President Muhammadu Buhari to tackle issues of insecurity in Nigerian waters. Creation of ports at other deep sea zones outside Lagos is another attempt at decongesting the saturated Apapa seaport. What is the state of these river ports? How can Nigeria enhance its water transportation system to free the highways? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be speaking to the issues in a moment.
Many thanks, Ekene Ndului, for that background. With us in the studios here to discuss issues you raised and others, let's welcome Chief Dr. George Moghalu. He is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the National Inland Waterways Authority, NIWA. Chief Dr. Moghalu, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Good morning, Nigerians.
Also here with us in the studios is another regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria whenever we are discussing transportation issues. Mane Ochuboju is a transport consultant and also a legal practitioner. Mane, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, viewers.
We also have joining us from our Kaduna studio, Dr. Shehu Usman Gidatu of Consultancy Services Department, National Institute of Transport Technology, NIT, Zaria. It's a pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you, Jumai, and good morning, Nigerians.
All right, gentlemen, once again, we welcome you to this conversation around the enhancement of water transportation in Nigeria, and appropriately so, because we are in the rainy season, and some would say that this is when the waters are better, to use. Others, of course, will raise issues of concern and safety. Let's begin with the Managing Director of NIWA, Dr. George Moghalu. Dr. George Moghalu, tell us, where are we in terms of the utilization of inland waterways as means of transportation in year 2021?
Thank you very much again, Kingsley, for having me. Like I said the last time I met with you here, water transportation is one area that I think has great potentials for this country. And immediately after my appointment, I looked at that potential, to what extent we can harness it for the benefit of Nigerians. Let me begin by commending the present government for the interest they have shown. The present government of Muhammadu Buhari has shown great interest, and we have received most of the support we require from the Federal Minister of Transportation to enable us to drive this particular agenda. We've started, we've gone far, but we've not reached our destination with regards to actualizing our objective. If you remember, when I was appointed MD, in the course of my first interview, I said I will be a fulfilled person if at the end of my tenure, water transportation becomes a transport means of choice, both for goods and services. And we now focused attention in dealing with that because of the long, how would I put it, long neglect of that particular sector, very long neglect. So you find out that there are challenges that you must address, challenges that has to do with awareness principally, challenges that has to do with security, challenges that has to do with making sure that the channels are all year round navigable. Because like the introduction said, we have over 10,000 kilometers of waterways in this country, over 10,000 kilometers that can, through where you can even access about 26, 28 states of this country by water. But I must also be honest enough to tell you that it's only about slightly over 3,000 kilometers that is all year round navigable. Okay, so even maintaining the channels of this 3,000 and some fraction kilometers is also a major challenge, but we're dealing with it. And like Kingsley rightly observed, during the rainy season, the tides are usually higher. So the drafts doesn't really matter so much because you have a lot of water to enable you to operate. But emphasis is on now to get this issue sorted out and then reawaken our consciousness with regards to tapping the full benefit of this particular sector.
Okay, thank you, Doctor, for your opening comments. Let's now join Mani. As always, it's a pleasure. He has spoken about, long neglect of the water transportation in Nigeria. And growing up, we know that that is one of the most vibrant means of transportation. Then, over the years, it has been neglected. Let's have, as a consultant, let's have your assessment of the water transportation in Nigeria as it is now, even with the intervention of the present administration.
The key issue of neglect have been rightly put. The neglect set in, I think, in on around the 80s, mid-80s, up to, say, 1999, 2014 or thereabout. But there have been concerted effort to improve the functionality of the waterways, particularly inland waterways. The inland has been the most neglected. The coastal also neglected, but the maritime is functional, it works because of the exigency and the force of trade, international and otherwise. So focusing mainly on the inland waterways, the neglect has been extreme. Extreme to the point that even before we started this conversation, I was having a chat with Dr. Moghalu. Take Onitsha, for example. Onitsha Port has been ready, 100% ready for over 40 years. They've spent billions fixing it as a water port or river port, and it was not working at all. I mean, at all. So that is just a metaphor of the extent of neglect. And then you talk about other ports. There's Baru, which Dr. George also rightly commented on.
Baru is also ready. Okay, fair enough. Baru became ready about 2018, 2019. But we're talking of Onitsha being ready since 83, 84. In fact, 82 to be more precise, or thereabout. During the days of Ikweme and Shagari regime. Exactly. So that is a mirror image of the extent of neglect of the waterways. And furthermore, they were not properly regulated as to the use of the type of vessels, the use of canoes, the use of barges, the use of jetties were not properly regulated. The proper regulation of it really started with this regime, where they begin to sit up as to regulating the use of those waterways, issues of safety, what do you call it, vest, using vest when you are in the waters.
Life jackets.
Life jacket, to be precise. Life jacket. And the seaworthiness of your vessels. These are things that they became serious with in the last 6 years. So it is largely a neglect of an enormous resource of Nigeria, considering that we are thinking of diversification of the economy, and considering the fact that besides diversification of the economy, water transport provides a significant means of even supporting the economy itself, supporting economic activity, supporting carriage of goods, particularly haulage of mass of heavy goods. If you are carrying bulk goods, water is about your best bet. Because a barge, for example, a barge can carry what 18, 19, 20 trailers and tankers can carry. Sometimes even up to 100. Oh yes, depending on whether it is flat bottom or not, depending on the size and the nature. And these are things that can readily be done to reduce cost of transportation, to reduce cost of even the goods we buy. Because every item we consume, cost of transportation is built into it. So if you're able to reduce cost of transportation, it will bring down inflation.
You know, money. Thanks. I just before we return to Kaduna to get the first contribution by the guest, let's return to Dr. Moghalu. You know, listening to you and then listening to Money just now, you just have goose pimples wondering. So, yet this is another gold mine that we are living fallow. Gold mine because of the immense opportunities. So I'm just wondering, in terms of orientation, what is the thinking like in government? Because if I say government, I mean all tiers of government, to say, look, how do we tap into this huge resource? You indicated just now 10,000 kilometers of waterways, and we are exploiting less than a third of that, you know, for all year-round navigability. And whenever we're talking about transportation, you will see state governments, some of them building airports. You will see everybody talking about roads. They will do 1, 2 kilometers, and then the next thing, they are organizing dance and band, you know, to commission it, and so on and so forth. I will see the heavy impact that articulated trucks cause on our highways. So in terms of orientation and attitude, are we seeing a shift from government? And if we are seeing a shift, how is this manifesting? What is the understanding and thinking of government about, say, look, this is a gold mine, go exploit it?
Yes, I'm very excited with the issues you raised because when I took over the management of National Inland Waterways Authority, the first interview I had, I said that if there's anything I need to address now, it was the issue of underreporting of NIWA. That we had that challenge. For me, it was a major challenge. It was even more important to me than the issue of resource in terms of financing the projects. I saw underreporting of NIWA as a major challenge. That we need to bring NIWA to the consciousness of Nigerians so that they will understand who we are, understand what is expected of us as an organization, understand the role we have to play in the development of our economy. Fortunately, let me also place on record our appreciation of the support we've received from the media. electronic, print, everyone, they came to our rescue. Now people talk about NIWA. And that's why we're laying so much emphasis. Like what you said, it's for us now, like what we are doing now, to engage even all the tiers of government, to let them understand, like Manny rightly observed. I am one who have said repeatedly that our road infrastructure are not designed to carry the weight they are carrying. Therefore, there is no way you will expect these roads to survive. I gave an analogy. If 5 million containers are going to the southeast, what that translates to is that 10 million trailers will be on the road. 5 million carrying the 5 million containers and 5 million carrying the empties back to Lagos. So we can only remove these trailers from the road by making the waterways functional, all year round, navigable, so that people can take full advantage. And if you remember, when I took over, I said that one of the things I want to be remembered for is bringing Onitsha to be functional. And we did a test run to move consignment by water between One to Onitsha. Everybody I encountered discouraged me. Oh no, if it is not draft being low, it is about security. Everybody was telling me this same story. Fortunately, only one person keyed into it, the president of the Badge Owner Operators Association. I met with him. I told him, I said, listen, if there's any support I want from you now, it's about helping me to open this route. Because I want goods to move from Lagos to Onitsha, and then One to Onitsha, vice versa. And if I'm able to do that, one, will decongest the ports in Lagos, two, will remove this pressure on our roads. And after talking with him, he saw my passion, and they said, okay, fine, let's try it. But I said, let's keep our mouth shut, let nobody know, before we get sabotaged. And both of us continued walking, meeting people, talking, and he volunteered his badges, 3 of his badges. And we moved consignment from One to Onitsha. We successfully did it using flat bottom badges. In fact, we made it public only when I was releasing the badges to go back with empty containers back to One. So it worked. And that encouraged us now to start the initiative we are doing now in moving goods from Lagos to Onitsha. And for us to do this, I had to now engage the Importers Association, the owners of these goods, because it is the owner of the good that will tell you where he wants his goods to be delivered. Involve the Chambers of Commerce in Onitsha. And they all keyed in. So we are, but you know, like every human being, they will want us to do the gamble first. They see it as a gamble. Let government take the challenge first. When we succeed, they will not key into it. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but in a matter of few days now, I'm sure consignment will move from Lagos to Onitsha. Because once we are able to do this, it becomes regular. There are also partners who are interested in this vision. A Chinese company that has offered to do some level of dredging, to help us open the other routes. Okay, like Barrow he mentioned, world-class port, completed. But the challenge on Barrow now is not because the port has not been completed, it's not because the waterway is not open, but the challenge for Barrow now is the access roads. But fortunately, the federal government has keyed into it. The state government, Niger state government has also keyed into it. And that I'm very convinced that in a no distant future, that challenge will be resolved. Because this idea of, oh, you won't succeed, this draft, this problem, I am one person who believes that if there's a problem, it is meant to be solved. And in the process of solving it, you gain experience. You learn some lessons. I have a minister who said, lay emphasis on maintenance dredging. Not necessarily about capital dredging because the cost implication is high. And I keyed into that. We're getting dredgers. We have already received some. We're now, like this Onitsha Lagos route I'm trying to do. As we speak now, survey is going on so that I can look at the survey. If there are areas where we need to do some cleanup so that the channels can be free for consignment to move, I am convinced we will do it and our people will buy into it. I agree with you, state governments have a role to play here. Local governments have a role to play here because these water routes pass through states. So we intend to engage them. Last week, we were talking at a management level. We want to organize a summit now to get the states to understand that they are partners with us, that they can partner with us for their own benefit, apart from the fact that, oh, NIWA is a federal government establishment that they also have. There are some states that have keyed in, some states that have established their own water transportation authorities in the states like Lagos. They've all opened their own. A few days ago, I was in Lagos about 3 or 4 days ago to commission patrol boats for security. And they inaugurated a task force, okay, to man and manage all the waterways in the Lagos axis. And the team we put together, the task force put together, has members of LASWA, we have members of the Maritime Union, we have members of Ato Abaton, the boat owners, and we got all of them together because it is now not only a NIWA challenge. Accidents don't know NIWA, okay? And we since emphasis before had been on making sure that our NIWA jetties, all protocols are observed. We now said, since we are doing that, they have now jumped and stopped using our jetty. They now go to waterfronts and then, or use other private jetties. So why don't we involve all these people so that they will be part of making sure that these protocols are fully obeyed so that the areas can be safe and viable at the same time.
Thank you so much. It's like you're opening, a whole can of information for us to, and I'm sure Nigerians are watching and understanding the way your concept is in trying to open up the waterways for Nigerians to enjoy it and to earn money at the same time. We have also joining us via Zoom, we have joining us via Zoom, Dr. Bashir Jamo, Director General NIMASA. He'll be joining us in the course of the conversation. But we're going to Kaduna now, where Dr. Shehu Usman Gidado is a consultancy, the Services Department, National Institute of Transport Technology, NIT, in Zaria. As part of the policy-making body of transportation, water transportation in Nigeria, you've listened to our guest here telling us how and if we key into water transportation in Nigeria, how it will help enhance the living standards of Nigeria and move goods and people across states through the waterways. Let's have your take on the state of the transportation, water transportation in Nigeria.
Thank you, Jumai, and good morning, viewers. Actually, the situation about water transportation in Nigeria, particularly inland water transportation, is not about enhancing it. It's about creating, not even about recreating it. It's about creating water transportation in Nigeria. Because where there is water transportation, at least it should participate in the movement of between 10 to 50% of all heavy cargo freight across the country and linking the coastal seaports. But in Nigeria, we have water transportation doing less than 1% of that. So I think this is time we should start thinking about really creating water transportation, seeing the barges, the boats moving across the channels, and then stopping by at inland river ports, loading and discharging goods. And then to do that, of course, every transportation mode has its own system. In the same way, water transportation also must have the system on ground before we can achieve any tangible activity, and then also see it contributing towards the movement of goods and services, and of course even passengers across the country. To do that, the first thing is that we need to enhance institutional dedication in that. The stakeholders in the water transport system are so many, minimum of 10 key stakeholders, and all have a role to play. And their institutional strength, dedication, must also be backed by synergy among all of them. For example, NIWA has a mandate to create navigability along the waterways. With navigability, then there will be movement. The Nigerian Ports Authority, having the seaports is like a very good connectivity to provide the movement of goods from the coastline into the hinterland and vice versa. NIMASA has a role to play in terms of providing the requisite security along the waterways for movement of these watercrafts carrying goods. The Nigerian Shippers Council has the responsibility to actually encourage, not even encourage, ask shippers to take advantage of the cheapest mode of moving goods from, for example, Lagos into the hinterland. By road is now costing about between 1.5 to 2 million naira, and effectively halfway, even up to Lokoja by waterways, it will cost far less than 300,000 naira to do the same trip. So we have particularly the Council for the Regulation of Freight Forwarding. It's not about regulating freight forwarders, but about regulating freight forwarding. And freight forwarding is about moving goods from one location to the other, to its own destination. And we should come to a situation which I believe is going to be very necessary in such a way that we have to regulate what quantum of goods moves on roads, on rail, and on waterways. Particularly looking at the fears expressed by even the Federal Ministry of Works in terms of, high volume of traffic on the roads, costing so much in terms of maintaining the roads, causing accidents, the road safety will cry. Spending so much on FEMA and other activities, Ministry of Finance will cry. So if we get to a situation whereby we realize that water transportation all over the world, or according to the way our transportation and logistics setting is in modern days, there must be the collaboration and connection between all the modes, and each mode has a role to play in every economy. Particularly, heavy goods and high volume of cargo are typically moved by waterways and by rail. The roads have no business doing that, and where it should be done, there should be a maximum regulatory axle weight for these vehicles. So much so that we save our roads. So, but most importantly also, the three important systems that makes up water transportation. The ports must be built, inland ports, because that is where transportation starts, at a terminal. If we don't have these inland ports in good shape, they cannot connect to any seaport. They cannot dispatch any cargo or any vessel onto the waterways to move to any part of the Nigerian water systems. Then secondly, I have talked about the need for the navigational channels. Then the carrier and the locomotive power for water transportation. We need the barges, we need the boats, we need the light ships, and their propulsion to move. So three things must be in place. One, navigable waterways. Two, operational vessels to do the carriage. And then three, terminals where this carriage will start and also stop. When these three did not come in place, as I was trying to recall, there is no way we can achieve water transportation or enhance it. But if we can create very good navigable waterways, encourage both, particularly the private sector, to invest in owning barges, light ships, boats, and other watercrafts for carriage of goods and passengers, and then also enhance public expenditure towards building new inland ports, making the ones that have been already built workable and functional, and also connecting particularly these inland ports to markets or to cargo centers. That is very important. And unless water transportation is made in this way to form an alternative means of transportation, we will still continue going around and around talking about how water transportation has thrived before and why is it not there now and how are we going to come about it. The whole thing is about rededication of all stakeholders and creation of synergy among these stakeholders to achieve water transportation in Nigeria.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Shehu Gidado, there for your elaborate comments on this issue. We earlier talked about another guest being with us via Zoom from Lagos, Dr. Bashir Jamo, Director General of NIMASA. You can see him there on the right side of your screen. Dr. Jamo, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria today. Well, the point has been made earlier by Mani Ochuboju that the maritime sector in our water transportation system is perhaps the most visible on account of international trade. Coastal and inland, not much so. But we do know that there are also issues even with the maritime sector, leading, of course, lately to the initiation of the Deep Sea Project. So tell us something, how well are we doing? We know that we used to have issues in the past, particularly with regard to security and safety. Where are we now?
Thank you very much, Kingsley, and good morning, Nigerians. Sometimes this year, or towards the end of last year, between November and December, the issue of insecurity in our own waters reached its tallest. And as you are aware, the international community tagged Nigeria as one of the most dangerous waters to trade on. And between November, December, we used to record an average of attacks of up to 6 per week. So it means average, we do experience 1 attack in a day, and which was very worrisome. And as you mentioned, the federal government already signed an agreement because of the deteriorating platforms to check the excesses of these criminals and patrol our own waterways. Not only our waterways, also the Gulf of Guinea. So by the beginning of January, we started deploying our assets locally. By the end of first quarter, from 1 attack in a day, it was reduced to 1 attack in a month. By July this year, the International Maritime Bureau that is responsible for monitoring the progress of maritime security worldwide issued their second quarter report. And that answered your questions, how far we have gone on the issue of maritime security, which shows that for the past 27 years, we have never recorded success in terms of maritime security as we recorded within the second quarter of 2021. The piracy attack reduced to over 80% as it used to be. This success was recorded last in 1994, meaning that we are having a very good headway in terms of maritime security. And we are now getting to the end of third quarter. And any moment from now, we are expecting the international body to release the third quarter report. And from our own monitoring and observation, we don't expect nothing less than what we reported in the second quarter. So as far as the issue of maritime security is concerned, I think Nigeria, we are having a very good outing. By December, we will have a year cycle. What we used to observe is that during the dry season, the attack used to be more pronounced. But as God will have it, now we have gone into the third 3/4 of the year, and we are making a very good headway. When we assume office, we tried to compress our own strategy into what we call triple S, maritime security, maritime safety, and shipping development. We spend most of our time to address the issue of maritime security, and we have achieved a very good milestone for the third quarter. Now we are into the second S, which is maritime safety. And as Dr. Gidado mentioned, we must have a very good navigational water with wrecks all over the coastal waters and beyond. We won't have a very good safety. Most of the accidents that we have been experiencing, including that of inland waterways, many a time has to do with the wrecks we are having or objects that used to constitute harbor for those ships. On Friday, the 24th of this month, the Honorable Minister of Transportation flagged off the nationwide removal of our own wrecks in our own water. As you are aware, Mr. Kingsley, this wreck has been there for so many decades. We were unable to do that. Basically, you know, the wrecks is a threat to our own environment as well as they constitute hazard to navigation. But the Nairobi Convention, signed in April 14, 2015, has given responsibility of removal of wrecks into three broad areas. One may ask, who is responsible for the wrecks and what measures can be taken based on such responsibility, and how can the responsibility be enforced? Nigeria, we ratified that convention, but we are yet to domesticate the convention. We're in the process of domesticating it to become a national law. The registered owner of a ship bears strict liability according to Nairobi Convention. But unfortunately, because we are yet to start enforcing for non-domestication of that law, we were unable to commence this exercise. So what we did was for the state to take the responsibility for the time being to start removing this wreck nationwide. And as I mentioned, 24th on Friday, the Honorable Minister flagged up the nationwide removal of this wreck. So meaning that we are now on the second segment of the triple S, and on the third segment, which is capacity building, fleet expansion, shipping development, ship repairs, and shipbuilding. We are into it. We have been sending our own children abroad to acquire education so that we can now become a maritime nation with our own CPRs everywhere in the world, as well as the issue of CBFF, which Mr. President has granted approval, even though we have some technical hitches on the implementation, but we are working tirelessly to make sure before the end of the year, we commence the disbursement for the fleet expansion. So far, this is what we have gone through, and we are hopefully before the end of the year, we will be able to produce a report card for the Nigerian to see and to assess our own performance so far. Thank you very much.
Dr. Bashir, I'm still going to stay with you briefly. You've outlined some of the, improvement in the maritime sector and the challenges you are facing, like the wrecks. And at the launch of the Deep Blue project, you said, and I quote, "This effort to secure our waterways would give Nigerians more leverage to harness the enormous resources of our maritime environment and aid the drive towards economic diversification." Talking about the economy, if successful, if all these things you've reeled out is taken care of, in your estimation, how much do you think Nigeria will be getting through business on the waterways? Because I hear it's in trillions.
Thank you very much, Jumai. that is what I tag as enabling triangle. The enabling triangle tried to summarize, just like I gave you the triple S, tried to summarize what we intend to achieve in terms of economic diversification, growth, and development. You know, we are now in the verge of launching the blue economy. Internationally, blue economy now is the mainstay of most of the modern economy. Before now, the Nigerian government income, we do rely heavily on fishing. And because of the increase in terms of maritime insecurity, we discover the extinction of fishery in our own waters, because many a times these criminals attack the fishermen with their own vessels, and then take over the vessels, use it to go and attack the mother vessels in our own territorial waters and beyond. So the enabling triangles suggest good governance in terms of policy intervention. From time to time, we look at these problems in terms of criminality and address such issues through the injection of policies that will address those issues. And it's through that particular policy intervention the Deep Blue project was introduced. And the result of that, or outcome of that particular policy, is the indication of the international community's recognitions and endorsement of what we have been doing, which practically shows the drastic reduction in terms of maritime insecurity in our own waters. The second segment of enabling triangle has to do with infrastructure. We can't sit down and fold our arms and leave the issue of infrastructure is in our own waterways, just like that. So the government now introduced policy that has to do with modular floating dock. The modular floating dock we have now is one of the 5 we have in the world, in Africa. So we are in the verge of deploying it. About 3 weeks ago, we received the note of ICRC to go ahead with the business plan as a public-private partnership. Then the next segment has to do with after the maritime security, after the issue of policy intervention, then we have the issue of infrastructure. Now, having achieved these pillars, we are now going to the full-blown blue economy. If you notice, I've been moving around to get the buy-in of the state governors, because we cannot sit down at the federal level when we have 8 neutral states by the definition of the Supreme Court. We have 8 neutral states. So all the 8 neutral states, we have tried to interface with their governors to tell us their own area of comparative advantage in terms of what we can insert in our own policy making, to make sure that they are being carried along and the policies address those things that they have or they are interested in. Then we now bring the private investors. Now, in so doing, what we are targeting at the end of the day, with the campaign of the international community saying that they will no longer have to rely heavily on oil, they will have to look for an alternative means of energy. Sometimes they go for electronic vehicle cars, and then the issue of energy, solar energy, and other things like that. So at the end of the day, in the next 10 years, we may not be able to enjoy the revenue we are enjoying in terms of oil. So our target is the blue economy, the asset we have and the resources we have in our own waters. We are going to develop it to be the mainstay of our own economy. And we intend to launch the blue economy between now also and end of this year, so that everybody will now have to key in. Within the next 10 years, we have a parallel alternative source of income that will work hand in hand with the oil. So, Jumai, we don't have a statistical analysis that will give you the accurate figure what we are expecting. But what we are saying, the blue economy will be one of the mainstay of Nigerian economy. We are working toward that, the diversification from the mono economy to multiple economic revenue source through the use of this blue economy policy, and to ensure that the Nigerians, they don't have any source of worry in terms of, dropping of our own oil when the blue economy and the resources in our own waters are available.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bashir Jamal of NIMASA. Back again to our Abuja studios. I mean, one of the first obvious questions to ask will be to the Managing Director of NIWA. How much collaboration is there between NIWA and NIMASA in this whole idea of moving towards a blue economy? We know that on the east coast of Africa some years ago, when former President Obasanjo was there, and the African idea of a blue economy was launched and discussed extensively. But we are only now, as it were, waking up to it. But one question is, what is the linkage between NIWA and NIMASA on this? And then secondly, have we started to unpack the multifarious aspects of this very lucrative blue economy? Let's take, because Dr. Gidado was talking earlier about vessel acquisition, the three critical parts. Let's take vessel acquisition in the first instance. I know that there were issues with the cabotage funding scheme and so on and so forth, but that tended to relate more to the maritime sector, big ocean-going vessels and so on and so forth. But we know that the era of dugout canoes, that era is virtually gone now. So if we want to enhance inland water transportation, you need modern boats. What happened to the Delta boat yard? Do investors recognize that this is an area you can get into? How do we acquire our own barges? How do we build our own barges? How do we maintain them? That's why you have a lot of work to do. So tell us how you're going about it.
Yeah. Let me begin with the aspect of collaboration. The truth about it is that we understand, and I think other chief executives share the same sentiment, that no one can do it alone, that there's need for collaboration. And what we did, the chief executives, is that we created a platform where we meet, the chief executives of the maritime agencies under the Ministry of Transportation. We meet, we discuss, we look at our challenges, we look at our collaborations. How can we move this sector forward? So, and the meetings, NIMASA has hosted, NTA has hosted, I have hosted in Lokoja. They all came to Lokoja. We sat down, brainstormed. Maritime Academy Oron is about to host and things like that. So we have that platform where we sit down to look at our challenges. And if you remember the last time I spoke here, I said that I've received all the encouragement from my colleagues in the other parastatals who share the same sentiment on making the water sector viable. Because we understand as a team the potentials, the enormous potentials, the benefit to our economy, the benefit to our nation. So I can say, without fear of contradiction, that my colleagues, every one of us have keyed into creating the enabling environment for us to interrelate so that we can develop the multimodal means of transportation. Having said that, the area you now raised, which is also very critical, is the point Dr. Gidado mentioned in the course of his explanation. One of the three things that needs to be done. For me, it should have been four, apart from development of the infrastructure, the jetties, the ports, the issue of procurement of ocean-going vessels, making the routes navigable. Security also has to be added. to those 3 points he raised. But on the issue of developing those sectors, we've been able to synergize with some private sector investors. You know, government still has its own role to play. What we did as an organization is that, first of all, we tried to regulate the boat production process, the boat yards in Port Harcourt, in Onitsha, in Lagos. We tried to regulate them. We tried to monitor their activities, and that is ongoing. If you remember, 3 or 4 days ago when I commissioned some patrol boats in Lagos, I talked about our electronic registration of boats, where we've gone to that stage now. We get these boats electronically registered. So you don't even need to come to our office to register. You can do it electronically, so that we can also have opportunity to assess these vessels, to be sure that they are river worthy. Okay, because we don't want a situation where people now go in. And again, we also realize this challenge, that there is need for us to support this sector. We have given some vessels to some areas. In fact, by early next week, we are going to commission a tugboat, houseboat, and then patrol boats in Port Harcourt. We acquired some patrol boats that I'm distributing to various area offices to enhance security for them to monitor the processes. So, but the issue you raised about the cabotage law and the disbursements, I think also that that aspect should also be encouraged, because it's not necessarily only about ocean-going vessels, because you don't need ocean-going vessels in the inland waterways. You require the smaller size vessels, the barges, and what have you. I'm happy to say that some private sector investors are interested or have developed interest, and they're talking with us with regards to acquiring their own new barges. What we did as an organization was to register barge operators who want to operate on this route, who want to commercialize these routes. About 15 companies we have registered, and we are talking with them. They are the ones helping us to drive this process of moving cargo. But like I said, as an organization also, we have also acquired our own barges. But you must understand one basic fact. For a sector that has not been very active, for people to key into it, they want to see how you have tried, and see if you succeed, then we now key in. So that is one thing, and that's why we now decided to be at the forefront, to now use our own badges, to even hire badges, to move this consignment, so that once our own moves, even the importers themselves, we have built confidence in them. The Chamber of Commerce, when we talk, some of them have come to meet with us from the Chamber of Commerce, who are interested in this sector, who want to invest in procurement of ocean-going vessels, river-going vessels, ferries, and what have you. We just signed an MOU about last week with a company that wants to start again. If you remember, the Calabar-Oron axis. Okay, they want to start the business again. So they've brought in 2 ferries. Okay, they're expecting their pontoons so that they can deploy it to that particular route, because these are commercially viable routes. The statistics are there for anybody to see. But because, like Manny acknowledged also, when we lost interest in this, we neglected this particular sector, because I remember as a student, I used the boat to go from Oron to Calabar. By then, that Itu bridge was not built. I was visiting my uncle who was
it was safe.
Yes, my uncle who was a custom officer in Calabar. So anytime I come to Calabar, I was going to Calabar, I stop at Oron, I board one of the boats, and then cross over to Calabar, stay with him. After the time I want to stay with him, I come back again. He brings me to the jetty there. I now cross over. So that sector is being critically addressed. I align completely with what Jamo MD Nimasa was saying with regards to the potentials, the enormous potentials in this sector. And with the commitment of the administration to getting this sector work, I think the story will change.
Indeed, you know, you have to set examples for people to follow. Thank you. As the conversation begins to, you know, wind down, we've been discussing enhancing waterways in transportation in Nigeria, and our guests here have been giving us quite a lot of information. We'll take a break right now. When we return, our conversation will continue.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. We still have all our 4 guests with us, 2 of them here in the Abuja studios, guests in Kaduna, and Dr. Jamal of Nimasa via Zoom from Lagos. Now back to Mani Ochugboju. Mani, well, I hope we recognize what the potentials are in terms of looking at the coordinates. But how do we achieve a break-in into this long neglected, once previously profitable, but how do we achieve a break-in so that all the parts, can now begin to work? And just as we talk about agriculture as one of the means of diversification and to some extent solid minerals, we see the water transportation sector right before our eyes, but achieving the break-in appears to be a critical issue. How do we achieve this?
Thank you, Kingsley. Achieving a break-in will require us going beyond the incremental approach we have been following. Before this regime, there was neglect. This regime have started to revive it, particularly water. The focus, I know, is on railway and on aviation, but water is increasingly beginning to get our attention. Getting our attention because of the exceedingly tremendous potentials of water, both the coastal and the inland. In one of our data that we collected, incidentally, some of it we got from Mogalu here, we stand to make a minimum, conservatively, of $1.2 billion on inland waterways alone on a regular basis. He's here. These are his data on one of the studies we were working on. So in a situation where there is so much poverty and underdevelopment and unemployment, and you're raking in on a regular basis $1.2 billion just on Baru, Lokoja, Onisha, to Calabar, inland Benue, inland waterways. Imagine if the guys in Zamfara and some of my friends in Borno, they hear that they can be making money in Lake Chad and River Gongola and River Benue far more than they are making in the jungle. They will join this business. This is where the real gold is. And it is at no risk to your life or your limb. And you can employ thousands, and I repeat, the MD is here, hundreds of thousands of stevedores, boat repairers, people to man warehouses, people to carry goods, you name it. The potentials are enormous. You train people. It's even one of the mandate of NIWA to train people within the industry. Now, looking at NIMASA, looking at Nigerian Ports Authority, they generate an average of 300 billion annually, which is fantastic. Give or take 250, 270 annually. But this is where we are worried. They also lose over 40 billion because of congestion, poor management, and other issues that using the river ports could have saved us. We don't need to be losing 40 billion. So breaking in, plug those losses. Plug those losses. Like the attempt by NIWA to start moving vessels from Lagos is a breaking point. Because it's radical. We don't need incremental, do a little here, do a little there, patch here, patch there. No. We need a bold, radical move like NIWA is doing, where you carry goods from One straight to Onisha, carry goods from One straight to Baru. Do something radical. That is a quantum leap. That is what will transform the image, the perception, and the reality of the industry within the next 2-3 years. We're not talking of 4 years now, because this 4-year cycle policy don't help. And you put this in place within the next 2 years, the next regime coming in, regardless of the coloration of the politics, they will follow it. When they see that they are making billions, dollars from NIWA alone, who would want to turn their back on it? Nobody. So that point of breaking in, plug the losses we are making in Apapa Port and Tinkan Port. Plug it. Move those vessels from Lagos. Decongest Lagos immediately. It's a matter of national urgency anyway. And we can't be papering the cracks and be mollifying and being, let me say, diplomatic about it. It's a matter of urgent national crisis. Deal with it. Move all those cargoes there. And that's where I like the effort being made in Onitsha. Because 60%, and I dare say 65% of the port, of the vessels, of the, cargoes, containers precisely, being imported into Nigeria, is by the folks in Onitsha and Aba. So, even those in Lagos, majority of it is by them. So why do you have to use Lagos, where you spend 4 weeks just carrying your goods out of Lagos? And then another 2 weeks. Out of Lagos Port, sorry. And then another 2 weeks bringing your container back to Lagos. And you get charged for it, for bringing it late. You incur cost. So all those costs amount to the 40 billion Nigerian Ports Authority and Nigerian are losing on a regular basis. Plug that first. That's a breaking opportunity right there. So the moment we deal with those issues of leakages that are right before our eyes and deal with the congestion in Lagos, a significant turnaround in the blue economy we're talking about will begin to manifest in the near time.
Okay, you know, Mani and Juma, I was just wondering, Dr. Shehu Gidado in Kaduna, we've mentioned Baro a number of times in the course of this conversation. Now, this relates to transport economics, I believe. The issue with Baro is not the port itself, but the access.
Correct.
So I don't know the geography of that location, but why and what can be done to create the access? Now, Niger State, we are having stories about tanker drivers and articulated truck drivers blocking one way because of some bad portion of the road. Is that a state road? If it's a state road, can the state government not get into a PPP arrangement, develop the road, and nothing stops you from imposing, some reasonable toll as access to that Baro port and back? Assuming it's a federal road, what stops us from saying, look, we are going to employ the same strategy of tax credit to any willing agency, any willing company to say, look, go and build this road, hard pavement, as you are seeing from Apapa to Woroshoki, hard pavement so that the road doesn't collapse. And then, Baro Port is ready for use.
Thank you, Kinsley. It's all doable and it's all about getting the right investment. If we can be lucky enough, private investors can take concession of the road linking Baro to the highway. Or another one, building a rail line from Baro maybe to Mina or to any other railway axis, but particularly the federal government has already put in place both projects. But these projects are actually one of the important viable projects and candidates for concession if we want to see them sustained. And usually, just like we have seen the example of Baro, I was one of the people very eager to see a port in Baro in place, and we made sure it was there, only to find the port hanging, only to realize that this is not about Ministry of Transport alone. Ministry of Works should come in, the railway also should also contribute. So, but at the end of the day, now, the port remain hanging because there must be connectivity. Ministry of Works has to provide the roads that links Baro. And Ministry of Transport also has to put in place the railway connectivity to Baro Port. And it's not only Baro Port. Every other aspect of inland water transportation must have the right connectivity. We have been singing, suffering, crying about Apapa Port. It's a simple thing. Apapa Port or Tinkan Island was not adequately connected to the right size or volume of access that can evacuate goods out of the port or can take goods easily out of the port, and compounded by the tank farms that should have been run on pipes and then having these trucks. But most of all, Kingsley, I must mention this. We are coming to face a situation whereby if the refineries in Lekki, the refinery project in Lekki, starts production, and we now rely 100% of our petroleum products that we run our cars and other trucks in this country from that refinery, I'm still wondering how are we getting these petroleum products into the hinterland to, be distributed, which I see there's a possibility of uprooting all the tank farms in Apapa and relocating them to Lokoja, pumping every product of of petroleum products produced at the Lekki axis to the central part of this country that is within the Lokoja axis of the waterways. And from there, distribution. We should also understand that petroleum products are dangerous goods that shouldn't move long distances. But I have seen Nigeria breaching that law of international laws of dangerous goods, moving cargo of petroleum products from Lagos to Maiduguri to Kado to every other part of every distance is covered by this country with petroleum products which are dangerous goods. It cannot be sustained. And I cannot see how we can now easily, unless we resort to inland waterways, bring in barges and then start, pushing these barges or having self-propelled barges that can maneuver through the waterways and get petroleum products to the central axis of this country. Already we have suffered some three industries, cement, iron, and coal, that are located within the central part of Nigeria. All these are heavy goods generating industries. Cement alone, about 15 million tons is produced within the central axis, just less than 100 kilometers from the waterways, from this confluence in Lokoja. But yet, these 15 million tons have to move some just down about 200 kilometers to Onitsha, to Kano. These are the major destinations of cement. From the central production plants to either Onitsha or to Kano. Then from there, it's been distributed within less than 100, 200 kilometers to every part of this country. So comparatively in cost, 15 million tons will generate about 250,000 trucks of load of this cement. You can imagine 250,000 trucks on the roads. Then each of these trucks is, the entire 250,000 trucks will require nothing less than 300 billion naira as running costs to move this cement. And then the freight rate, if you look at it, again, there is about nothing less than about 400 billion naira again that can be spended as freight. But comparatively, believe me, less than 1 billion naira can move 15 million tons of cement to any part of Nigeria on the waterways. And so all these statistics or research into these costs, comparatives, and cost advantage, and then cost savings from damages on roads and other costs related to accidents and all that associated with it, is so enormous. But the key thing remains that infrastructure for inland waterways transportation is not on ground yet. We have to focus on that seriously.
Thank you so much there for your contribution. Let me now come back to the studio where Dr. George Magalu is sitting. Borough Port is the only port in the northern part of the country. Yeah. And last year, I think it was in the news all over. What is the state of that port, and how can it enhance economic activity, briefly, of the north, in 30 seconds?
As to whether it will enhance the economic development of the north, that is, you can take that for granted, because that is the reality on the ground. The Barrow River Port is a world-class port by every standard, every sense of imagination. I can tell you that, with the best of equipment. But like Dr. Mani said when he was making his comments with regards to the Barrow Port, The challenge has always been the access, because you can't bring goods. Barrow wasn't designed to be a warehouse for stacking of goods. It's a transit camp in terms of goods evacuation. So it's important that the goods come, the goods leave. So those issue of the roads with regards to roads taking off and terminating in Barrow must be addressed. I'm also happy to say that the federal government, through the Ministry of Works, is already taking this into consideration.
There's a rail line there too?
Yes, there's also a rail line put there by the, in fact, in the olden era. You must be interested to note that Barrow had a port under British, our colonial masters. If you go there, as you're going by water to Barrow, you will see relics of warehouses that they used, the UAC used at that time. So there's a rail line from Barrow that will take you to Mina to Kano. But it requires to be reactivated. The last time I had the privilege of going with the minister to appear before the National Assembly, he made mention of that effort is being made to make sure that that rail is put back in place, because it will help in evacuation of cargo from Barrow. Barrow is very strategic. The concept, the design is very strategic, because from Barrow you can reach out towards the other parts of the north. So goods can be moved by inland waterway from Lokoja, from Lagos, from Onitsha to Barrow, and then can be taken off from there and then be distributed either by road or by rail.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mogalo. That's a point I wanted Dr. Bashir Jamal to address, but we are pressed for time. Probably this would now be, as it were, a takeaway issue. In celebrating the GDP performance in the country lately, it was indicated that the transportation sector was one of the major contributors to the positive growth in our GDP. So that's about 5% or so growth that we saw. But I didn't have access to the breakdown, the subsectoral contribution of transportation. Therefore, the question would be, how can we increasingly ramp up the contribution of water transportation sector, including maritime, to our GDP growth? Dr. Jamal, can you say that in a few seconds?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kingsley. I think the issue on the contributions of maritime transportation to the GDP is an area that gives my agency a very worrisome thought, in the sense that I do not believe that 5% is the only contribution that the water transportation gives to the GDP. That is why we try to introduce the maritime data bank, where all the stakeholders will have to, contribute their own data into that data bank. Presently, the NITT area, they are taking the lead on the issue of the data bank for the maritime sector. But we commissioned a consultant whereby we will now have to bring all the other subhead and indices in terms of, fishing, in terms of ship repairs, in terms of shipbuilding, in terms of cargo movement, in terms of barges, in terms of trading rigs, in terms of boats, that is the ferry services, in terms of insurance, in terms of spare parts of our ships. We estimated over 1,000 ships do cross Nigeria from Gulf of Guinea and to different parts, and 70% of those ships are coming to Nigeria. So while we are achieving a lot of milestones in terms of maritime security, in terms of infrastructure, we are 100% sure that the contributions of the maritime industry will continue to swell up. But an accurate figure will be able to, we can be able to produce that figure after the full-blown establishment of our own maritime data bank, which also is going to be maybe within the next 2 months. We will be able to liaise with the National Office of Statistics, Bureau of Statistics, and align it with the national data. So at that time, we will be able to produce the higher figure. But I mentioned the areas where we can make use of to harness the increase of these contributions to our own GDP.
Okay, Dr. Bashir Jamo, Director General NIMASA, thank you so much for your contribution. And from our Kaduna Network Center, Dr. Shehu Usman Gidadu of Consultancy Services Department, National Institute of Transport Technology, NIT Zaria. Thank you for your contribution to the conversation. Mani Ochubujo, Transport Consultant, as always, it's a pleasure to have you join us on the program.
Thank you very much.
And Chief Dr. George N. Mwagalu, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer. Your contribution has been immensely appreciated.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Foreign is next.
Gas station pumps ran dry in British cities on Monday, and vendors rationed sales as a shortage of truckers strained supply chains to breaking point. A post-Brexit shortage of lorry drivers as the COVID-19 pandemic eases has sown chaos through British supply chains in everything from food to fuel, raising the specter of disruptions and price rises in the run-up to Christmas. Drivers queued for hours to fill their cars at petrol stations that were still selling fuel. There were also calls for National Health Service staff and other emergency workers to be given priority. Meanwhile, Serbian troops have been on a heightened state of alert after the government in Belgrade accused neighboring Kosovo of provocations by sending special police units to the border. Already, tense relations between Serbia and its former breakaway region have grown worse since the ethnic Albanian-led government there dispatched the police units to an area mainly populated by minority ethnic Serbs who reject the authority of the government in Kosovo's capital, Pristina. The deployment came as hundreds of ethnic Serbs have staged daily protests against a decision to require drivers with Serbian registration plates to put on temporary ones when entering Kosovo. Hundreds of Serbs in Kosovo have been protesting and blocking traffic with trucks on the roads leading to two border crossings.
All right, so that's it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. Deep thanks for your tuning in. We're back tomorrow at 7 in the morning. Take care of yourselves. And Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Jumoy Yusuf. Don't forget to step up, be a star, and fight against rape and rapists. It's been a beautiful morning. Thanks for watching.